sort of didn't assimilate that there was a problem. And the sad part was those 8 pads were not enough ever. They did not have a cloth to wear. And they were, when they felt wet, they would go to a spot and let it drop out. Nothing even to wipe, just go and wash themselves. And when I heard it, I think it's one of the most saddest what any girl, young girl can go through. And especially if she's in the fifth or sixth, when she's just menstruated without a mother, without an elder, without a sister to tell her what's happening. I think it was one of the worst things. And that's when Eco Femme got introduced. And believe me, it's like a health friend coming into their lives. And that's when they started using it. And those toilets were clean. We managed to get from the government red mugs for them to soak their Eco Femme cloth pads, because I had to teach them soaking, washing, drying, and no scrubbing with a brush, all those things which was taught to them. And the drying space. So because the school was not volunteering in the hostel room to dry your menstrual pads is ugly, they would dry menstrual pads on the grass, which is muddy. So you can't have cloth pads drying on that. So I got these poles put, wires made, and we would nicely hang our flags whenever. So it was a very convenient place. And while I'm talking to you about this, being a residential school, all the girls had practically the same printed pads. So the confusion was quite a bit. So for that, I got these fabric pens, which is black and pens. So when the dispersal or the distribution is over, every child writes on all the 4 pads their names in Telugu or English. Usually it's Telugu. They write their names. So without owning the pads, the 4 pads, they just don't leave the room. So the 30 children, all of them write on all the 4, and that's how they leave. So there's never a confusion. So this was the first school which made me feel that nobody wants to see waste. Nobody wants to. My entire presentation has got a lot of cows eating, sanitary, has got a lot of ugly pictures. Then I felt there was no need to introduce them to ugly. Ugliness is naturally understood. I don't have to give them samples of ugly. So that's how was my first entry into first schools. And then my story goes on, and I love my journey.
Thanks, Jayashree. I love this last thing you actually said really resonates, that we don't need samples of ugly. I mean,
Hey, Lauren, you're breaking up.
Yeah, you're breaking up. Lauren, you're breaking up. Can you repeat it?
Yes, I was just saying thank you. This last thing you said, that we don't need samples of ugly, really resonates. And it's, as Harshini was saying, it might start off as an exercise of imagination about what is menstrual waste, but actually it's very grounded in reality. And if we can draw that link and show it, and or if they already have that, as you were saying, Harshini, in mountainous regions, then that's the only reference of ugly we need, because people don't actually like waste. Kavya, over to you. What do you have to add about this topic? And if you'd like to share your video, it'd be super nice to see your face.
Sure. I'll just share my video. So I'd also just like to share a screen. Thank you. That's been great. So there's a power cut, so maybe you can't see my face now. I don't know about that. So I'll just share it's disabled. Screen sharing disabled. Okay. No worries. Can you enable?
Yeah.
One second. Sorry.
They'll make you the co-host, and then you can.
Oh, okay, cool.
Done.
Yeah, so I really have to thank Harshini also here, because she was the first person who actually helped me take on this whole narrative about menstruation, and the especially with respect to Eco Femme pads, but overall the whole discussion, how to speak. And it's been amazing because I spoke in a language which was completely new to me. I started speaking in Tamil. Thanks a lot to Harshini. Like, I was learning so much in one discussion with Harshini, one demonstration that Harshini did, not a discussion, a demonstration that she did for my very first set of girls in Vedaranyam. So at that point, there were lots and lots of things, some of which she already mentioned, about how to make the girls understand what they were using, the calculations, etc., etc. So I'm just not going to repeat those. So I'll add a few extra points. And like what Jayashree just now said, I do show a lot of ugly pictures. I do show a lot of ugly pictures because what I felt, it's easy to say, oh yes, that's so sad. It's so sad situation, but then unless the reality hits, most people don't want to take a what do you say, a decision on that. Most people don't want to say that, you know, it is really bad, or they don't want to really feel it. It's just namesake for a lot of people. So I show a lot of gory pictures. I don't know if they're gory enough, but then that's something uh, that's not so comfortable. So yes, so I kind of try to show my best. So I'm just having these headings that you've put up here. So I show few of these pictures. This is not my own click picture, but I also have certain pictures that I have clicked myself in a lot of rural areas, like what Harshini was saying. A lot of landfills and things are there. And even in Chennai is in a delta. It is in a river delta. The entire Chennai city is in a river delta. And it's so sad that the entire place, which is so full of migratory birds, even some 10 years back, it's not so anymore. You can see, you can hear, I mean, you can feel the smell, say a kilometer or two before the landfills, especially the Pallikaranai marsh, which is an eco hotspot. It is supposed to have so many birds from all over the northern Arctic, right from say September, October towards March, April. So here, like, I used to love to go for bird watching. That's when I had first noticed. I go see the birds and we see a lot of trash, and every year the trash is increasing. So that change is really, really important. You could see that, you know, there are more places which are trash covered, and everyone hates Palikarnai because of this, because of the trash. And I think this is an important message to convey. So that is one thing which is very, very important. All of these messages, and these are two images. One is from Baseless and one is from Eco Femme, I believe. So, and I feel this is very important because a lot of people relate to cow as God, and then, you know, showing this image wherein, you know, you have the cow and you want your God to sit there. You say that people, how much they agree that periods is not impure. Seeing a cow sitting in this trash is something that's quite disturbing for a lot of people. And similarly, you know, seeing dogs and their pets and everything. So that's something that's very uncomfortable. That's where people say that, you know, we would want to take a solution if it is possible, if it is not so hassle, it's not so full of hassle, if it's not so inconvenient, let us also put in some contribution. So these are few pictures, different people, different things strike them. So, but these are things that I feel really help a lot of people think about it. And then a lot of these pictures, especially again from a Tamil Nadu and from a Kerala context, the people who work in the sewers, it's something that really connects because there have been award-winning films by in Kerala, both in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, by different people, which have focused on the issue of manual scavenging, focused on people who are working the sewers. So that's something that's again connecting to a lot of people. But this is also something that people really don't want to watch. And then, yes, my own personal contribution, there's a few pictures that have come as part of this calendar. And I think these are also things that connect to kids. So this is what I'd shown few kids because they were not in kids as young as class 5. So it was something to help them connect with. So this is the kind of, and this whole fact that when you say that it takes around 800 years to decompose, and that's what really matters. So when you, so I usually tell that when you say 800 years, that means approximately 8 generations for one single disposable pad. And then you use so many pads. So each pad for 8 generations. So what do you want to think about that? And that's something I feel that really has connected. And I think this is a thought which also made me draw this picture. So, 10 generations later, when you dig expecting some treasure, this is what you would see. You would see these pads because they still don't decompose. They are the ones that is there. So I think these are the few images I feel really help to convey. And these are the kind of ideas that help to convey that, this is something that's serious, this cannot be dismissed. So I think a lot of these pictures really help to help people to understand. And I think it's very important to speak about the waste. I've heard both of the other speakers talk about different contexts wherein you don't have to speak about waste, but I'm also seeing a group of audience wherein speaking about waste is important and asking them what do you do at your own place. So after all these discussions, now what do you do in your house? Do you burn them, do you bury them, do you throw it into a dustbin in your school or office? What do you do? And that is when they are like, this, I've seen that when I show these pictures, they are ready to say that yes, even I face this problem at home. Otherwise nobody wants to really own up. So when I say that, this is the truth with all of us, people say, yes, we also have this problem. We also face this problem. And that kind of is a connect, that kind of, then that kind of discussion happens like, what do we do? Shouldn't the government be working on this? What else do we have? Do we have options? So I think that kind of is something that's very important, especially the kind of issue that people face when it comes to burning of pads, the smell, the difficulty. And I think that's something that especially in Kerala, I've seen everyone relate to. How do you burn those? Even if you're living in a flat, where do you put those? And especially they were like, what do I tell my maids? I don't want them also to put them. So it's like, it's not just you, it's the maids who come to your house. So a lot of people who are very closely connected to your house. So all of them are equally involved in it. So I think that is where all these discussion goes. So all of these are important. And I feel different people, different things work for them, different things connect for them. So try out whatever works best, try out whatever you connect with, try out whatever resources you get. So I think that's all of these are the different aspects, different scenarios that I've been speaking to.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Kavya. And it strikes me also that you work with a different kind of audience too, in a way, to tribal women, whereas I know you do like a lot of work too, as you're referencing Chennai, like in more urban areas.
Yeah.
And it just strikes me that everyone's trying to bring this to life in a visual sense. There really is a strong visual aspect, no? And it links kind of perfectly to our next two questions, which sort of overlap. And if you can start off, Harshni. As Kavya rightly says, it is an uncomfortable topic. And it is confronting sometimes to really have to face the waste that we're creating with our menstrual products. So how do you teach it without making people feel judged? Oh, you're on mute. Let's unmute you.
So just bringing in the point, just putting a little bit more emphasis on Kavya's example of this treasure hunting, because I always find there is one example or the other, a treasure, like finding of a new treasure or something which is going on, ongoing story, in the newspapers and in the news. So we just like, for example, something, Kiradi was like 1.5 years ago, Tamil Nadu government found archaeological site with a lot of so like I also bring that, and okay, like some generations back, so we'll go with the map and look for it, and then what do you find? Your great grandmother's pads, like, so it actually which is still not degraded, which is like, so it's really that like when you get that fun active, like get their brains working into like, what do we find? And so this question is about the videos and so the resource, the tools, right? So
no, about judgment, like, so how, because it can be uncomfortable, do you ever come across that people can feel judged? Sometimes when we start rattling off, so this is how much you're making and this is how much waste is being created,
defensiveness.
Yeah, just to make sure that people don't feel judged about it. And maybe it's not something you come across, or like, but how do you kind of really manage that?
Sometimes I think in some ways you want people to be judged about it. Yeah, it's a good type of judge, good type of judging.
An eye-opening kind of just spotlight on an issue.
But it's for them to think. It's for we are in no place to judge it, like we're giving all this so that we think. And also like sometimes in urban settings, I feel, I mean, Kavya might be able to also speak more on it. When we go present for Rotary clubs and women's clubs and places like that, they don't really want to talk about this. This is a private waste. Why are we coming and talking? And they want to just like, not think about it and also not talk about it because they think they can't do anything about it. So a little bit of judgment is good in those spaces. And also like, as she also rightly mentioned, to bring in like, okay, it's okay, you are comfortable using the pad, comfortable having so much kilos of waste, but what about the people who deal with it? But what about people who live next to dump yards? Like these are the things which you like you bring in the social element to open their eyes. And I always say there's a movie that Wasteless and Eco Femme was also a part of it, Masika, which speaks about the scale of waste. I like that 10-minute video because it's 10 minutes and it's short. And two, like the scale of it, like we're just speaking about not just one pad or two pad, we're just speaking about like football fields of cricket fields of pads, like, So it's quite, I think we can share the link to the video. I think it's on YouTube.
We're just saying, Pranati, can you pop the link for that in our chat box, the link for Masika? It's also on Eco Femme's YouTube channel if anyone's interested.
Yeah. So I feel it's still like, I even watched it today. So it's still on date, like it was made 7 years ago, but still it applies. We've spoken about every aspect of it, the amount of waste, the social aspect. So I think a little bit of judgment is really okay. And to actually adapt according to the area, like you don't need to go too far with the girls who actually get it, but you need to sometimes pack different baggages for different audience. Yeah. So this video, which is 10 minutes, which covers a lot. That's nice. Yeah.
Thanks, Harshini. I'm going to throw it back to you, Jayashri. So this question of, so what I'm really hearing from you, Harshini, is like, it is important in a way, if we're talking about a question of judgment, it's about how do we sit with that discomfort? Because actually we do need to feel uncomfortable for behavior change. So I don't know if you have something to add to that, Jayashri.
Just like Kavya started off with Harshini, I started with Harshini too. So pretty much the basics remain Harshini's style. And because it's like an accepted kind of methodology, because she's been through it a lot and it has worked very well for me. So something which I love to do about waste, and you say about calculation, I also very clear on the fact that she says judgment. Sometimes you have to get them because it is always never I, it's always somebody else. I am not the contributor to the waste. I mean, mine is just one, is blank. But someone else, yes, they are doing it. So that to get them back to the feeling that we are party to it, we are all in it together, is tough, or rather it is very meaningful. And especially for me, because it is children in a residential school, they have very little scope of the outside world, but they are using disposable pads because it's being given free. So the point is, someone's giving it free and you want me to think it is bad. That by using it and throwing it, you want me to think it is terrible. Now, I can't tell them that, yes, that is what I want you to. But how do I do that? How do I do that? So I always carry these 3-4 slates like this. So I give it to all of them. Usually most of our little girls are pretty bad in mathematics. So it takes about 2-3 minutes more into that discussion. So we are how many sitting here? 30 of us. So how many do we use? 10, 14, 12, and also we average it to a decent number of saying, let's say 10 for calculation purpose. So that way, so 30 into 10. So I'll say, do you want to do it just this group? You think everybody in the school who menstruating or not? So how many could that be? So that would be about 200 girls, and they know it themselves because that many girls are there in the school who are menstruating. So we calculate that and we do it, and I give one smart one a calculator. So by the time they're getting confused, you do it, and they use this little calculator, and finally they get a pretty big number for 1 year. Now I say, okay, fine. Now you've got it for 1 year. Now, where do you think this 1 year would it all go? Oh, they just hate answering that question. They just dislike it. It's like already they know it's their contribution into the sanitary waste. It's ugly. So if you just heap it up, it's pretty much. And at that time, I think all of us use this, but then this is my mantra. Trash talk. I love this. So we don't, you can see it now. This is the wonderful Eco Femme trash talk.
Do you want us to screen share it? We've got it also on screen share.
Yeah.
We've got a digital copy just so you can see the detail. I'm glad that you find that very helpful.
So the kids love to looking at it. We call it the chettamata. Trash is chetta in Telugu and talk is mata. So chettamata, they say 2-3 times to get the angle of trash talk.
Sorry, Jayashree. I'm just trying to.
The ambassador presentation is just a second.
Because that's a very, very, I mean, it really gets focus on trash.
It's coming up now. Sorry to distract with you.
Sorry. You're saying, Chacho, what's the mantra you say with it?
Chettamata.
Which means?
Trash, chetta is trash, talk is mata.
Trash talk. Cool.
Okay, so now immediately when you look at it, you don't see the sanitary napkin very well in the chart, isn't it? But when you say banana, 2 days, 10 days, and they look at it, they will even go to the extent of saying it was a very ripe banana, it finished faster. So that engagement of understanding disposable, degrading starts setting up, because I don't come to sanitary napkin till we do 3 or 4 different things. So that discussion starts. And then when it comes to sanitary napkin, and when they see 500 to 800 years, I really think they wanted 4 hands, 2 on the ears and 2 on the eyes. You know, to imagine the numbers which they've just put forward, if that had to stay between 500 to 800 years, it's such a natural reaction. Some put it on the ears and some put it on the eyes. So I always think if you had 2 more hands, you would have made sure that you don't want to know, you don't want to see it. So that's been a very, very important tool for me, where I've been able to get across where the trash talk, degradable, and things like that. So these are some of the residential schools where I am very comfortable. I live in these schools with these children. So for me to be, I mean, I don't have to, once we finish the initial part, children come at wait times, different times. You said this, how can it, what is 500 years? You mean to say it will stay just like that for so many years? I've had many children coming back, and that's been a disturbing thought to them. So, and that is one of the schools where first, which I did it, this disturbing thought, they requested the school not to give disposable pads at all. So it was only Eco Femme. This was my first, second, third sessions, which I did in one school as pilot. And that was what it is. I have a very cute, where they've taken their own pledge about it, why they took the pledge. It's all very cute. So they sing that little thing we will use. And they always say, Eco Femme, thank you. They do that, like, you know. So they've associated themselves very well with all that. But there are other colleges, junior colleges, which I have been visiting after the first year that I've been doing. There, my association is not as personal as these schools. Now, for them, it's like just another lady who's coming to talk to them about disposable napkins. And so to get them to get in a smaller group would always be a challenge. They always said, you're giving distribution, give it to all 400 one time, just talk to them, we'll give you space. Now, that was never been my style and I don't like it. I hate the word distribution. It's like you're owning this new aspect of hygiene. I don't like the word like, free distribution kind. I hate that word and I totally disallow it. So at that time, there's a little thing that we do. I pre-take those, not crepe, but it's paper cut into little rectangular bits. And I keep a small, what do you call, not like a bucket, but a tray where the girls are asked to throw into that. And it all falls all over because their aim is not good enough. So that's exactly what happens to your sanitary napkins, and they see the numbers that come in. So it's not just their group, but the entire school or college, 30 into something. So I have over 150 sheets of paper where they're all asked to chuck like a game, red color, which has got a white at the back. So when they fold it and chuck it, they see the kind of heap even that little bit causes, so they can imagine what it would be when it is a larger one. So these are the few things that I do, because the rest of it I'm talking about hygiene, health, and things like that. And I don't know whether it is the right time to let you know, but in the tribal context, especially in our area, the first blood of the young girl is treated with a lot of reverence. So they take that first cloth of the first blood, and it is done as a special, can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's always done like as though it's not a puja. You have some...
we're just getting screen share off because I'm curious about this point you're making about the first blood and how there's a reverence.
Yeah, the first blood in our, I wouldn't say in all the villages, but then I have got a book authored on Girijana Vaibhavam, grandeur of the tribal area. In that, menstruation has a 2-page chapter where the menstruation is treated with a lot of reverence. The girl who menstruates, the first blood, that cloth which happens, is taken and rolled very neatly and kept into a particular place for the function that goes on. So the young girl in our tribal area does not think the blood is dirty. She does not think that it is dirty.
Yeah.
And at the same time,
it's really powerful. Yeah.
And another thing is that we don't have this men, women. It's a very, how do you say, a very, like gender wise, there's a lot of balance. So they don't have this thing. And in fact, a young girl who menstruates and is weak, the neighbors also come and give things for her to eat and get healthy and stuff like that. So it's like, it's always treated with a lot of reverence, affection, and not spoken of as badly at all. So I can't introduce things of which is in the outside world. I don't bring it into this area. It's not necessary. Like, why is blood? Do you think blood is dirty? They don't think it is dirty. So I don't go overboard about it. Your picture is frozen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Good. I was just saying, it's like, it's always so reassuring to hear the messages being similar through all the series, and it's always just to be responsive, to really understand the audience that you're working with and their beliefs, and then to respond to that. And I can really hear that in your work too. I'm going to move on to the next question because I'm so conscious of the time. I really want to have enough time at the end for our half-an-hour questions for our very experienced facilitate panel members. And so I'm going to hand over to you, Kavya, because you touched on this before, this idea of away, the idea of throwing away. And you were talking about like burning and I think burying, and of course there's flushing and other ways. But how do you kind of effectively really take people on that journey of, and then what after they dispose of their waste, however they dispose of it?
Yeah, so thank you again. So I think the most important part that they need to really understand, or what we need to really convey, is what are the options. And when I talk about the options, one thing that I really focus on is the economics, because I feel that's something that really helps. Because a lot of places, the girls or the women that I speak to may not be the ones who have who may not be having a decision making role in their lives, especially with respect to the money they have at their disposal. So the cost factor, how much you spend on disposable pad versus how much you spend on a reusable pad or a menstrual cup. So that is one discussion that always happens. So why do you do this? Because this away doesn't really happen, because especially in an urban setting, there's something that happens. I usually ask, okay, what is the right way to dispose things, or how what do you do when there is waste? How do you manage trash? And always the response will be to put it in the waste basket. And then everyone feels that they've done their duty. So I'm like, okay, what happens to the waste basket after that? Then they say, okay, it goes into that big one, big green one on the road. And then from there, then they're like, okay, from there things get a bit tricky. Okay, the van takes it. Okay, where does the van take it to? Then people start realizing it is to the landfill, or it is to an incinerator, waste to energy system. But then that's it. You don't have an option. There is no way. So that is one kind of a discussion. This usually happens in an urban environment, and in a rural environment or in a tribal environment. What I've usually heard is they're like, yes, you're right. We are seeing that a lot of people who come here from the cities, they are dumping it. So let us also not add in, because we've not been doing that, especially in tribal areas. We've not been doing that, but recently we've been asked to do that. So those are the kind of discussions that usually happen. And so that kind of establishes that this just doesn't work. A disposable pad doesn't work. And then usually the questions come, what about a tampon? See, tampon doesn't have plastic. In urban, especially in urban areas, that's what I get. Tampons doesn't have plastic. So what about tampons? And then this whole story about what goes inside it, what all health factors also are there, even in the pad, whatever happens in the tampon, the issues. And I use big terms like cancer and things, because I feel that once in a while, if there is some truth, okay, you can also use them, because people will also Google and they will also find out these words like cancer, infertility, rashes, itching, and all of these relate. All of these are scary. Nobody really wants to do that. So that's one aspect, the health aspect that needs to be there. The economic aspect I already said. And then the alternatives, again, question comes nowadays about the biodegradable sanitary napkins. What about them? So why not? Again, because there is this huge resistance. There's this huge idea that, you have to use something that's being advertised. That is only one that makes sense. So that is when I usually tell them, yes, because, the Whisper ad tells you only if you use a Whisper pad, can you become the school topper? And then people laugh at it. Yeah, we'd agree. You don't become a school topper when you use a Whisper pad. And that's when, again, the conversation again goes. You can't become the school topper by using a Whisper pad. So obviously, ads need to sell. They need to make points. They need to say that women have to run around on their periods. Yes, women can. People who menstruate can. But again, it's a choice. You don't have to necessarily wear white. Again, it's a choice. So all of these ads are reference points because people connect a lot to them. And then I talk about how I have been using the cloth, especially the cloth more than the cup. I always speak about the cloth. Two reasons. One is I personally like the cloth more than the cup. And second, I feel cloth is seen as something shameful. Cloth is totally non-aspirational. So when I am standing there as somebody who's giving the talk about this, I already have a position of respect. People are already ready to listen to me because I've been introduced as someone who can speak about it. And when I say I use cloth and I validate it, it's like the ad. It's like an influencer speaking about it. So that is where I feel that I have that power to do it. And I always invariably use that power to spread that message that, using cloth is not bad. And again, to audiences that are comfortable, I talk about free bleeding. I talk about also using the same water that my cloth pads were soaked in, or water from the cup that were used to plant my garden. I mean, that were used to water the plants in my garden, especially vegetable yielding plants, especially tulsi kind of plants, and also address the impurity aspect. So different kind of talks work. So but these are the usual routes that I take. These are the usual conversations that I have had, which kind of help people to understand that, this doesn't work. And especially the talk about incinerators and the waste disposal through a waste to energy system. Again, there's a huge amount of literature. And I think Gaia has a lot of information on that. Even Eco Femme has one of the blogs which have recorded that, which have noted down those. But simple facts about what an ideal incinerator should be in some areas work, but mostly what works is we tell them that, in a lot of schools, in a lot of offices, these kind of burner machines that are there, they're not functional after 1 or 2 months. They cannot take so much of load. They need to be regularly repaired. And that is when this whole conversation goes, that this away really is not away. There are a lot of aspects tied to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kavya. You actually teased out a point that I'm so glad that got covered before we forgot it. That question of away, or any question of environmental impact of waste, is also about ingredients, like really talking about what our products are made of. And then that also lends itself to a product analysis, like a comparison of the different ingredients that are in different menstrual products, like what's in, for example, one statistic a lot of people find shocking is that a conventional disposable sanitary napkin is the equivalent of about 4 plastic bags. These kind of things can be helpful. And if anyone's interested, we do have some diagrams or statistics and blogs about the ingredients that are actually in disposable pads, because that can sometimes help the away conversation. We're pretty much up to our question time. So while you're maybe thinking about the questions you have for people, I just wanted to say, Harshni or Jayashree, do you have anything else to add to this idea of away and how you unpack that or how you respond to it? Feel free to go for it.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. I think Kavya also roughly touched on it too. Actually, this whole idea of away also bringing in it to like your own self-responsibility, like just because you don't see it. I think also in the urban, it is just because you don't see it, it doesn't mean that you have dealt with it. Just because it got out of your house, it doesn't mean that it's gone, To just remind that and to also in a conversation where I don't think with girls sometimes you don't need to go very deeply into it, but with women I think sometimes when they are very like, oh, this is like I don't want to touch blood or want to, like when it gets to that territory. And I've also been in situations where women has to like, even sometimes when I get a stain in my underwear, I throw the underwear. How do you expect me to wash my pad, like when it comes to us, like, so when they speak from a space of privilege, like I don't need to think about it. I even like hold it like this. I've even had that women tell me like I touch my pad like this and throw it. How do you want me to wash? So I think it's really important to like the away doesn't mean like your dustbin is not the last place that your pad goes to, like to just remind that fact. Yeah, I wanted to add that when people think you need to go deeper into it when they start speaking from a place of privilege also. Yeah, that's where also a little bit of judgment works.
Yes, no, I'm happy this R word, like responsibility, came up. And it reminds me of what you said, Jayashree, earlier, which was we're all in this together. Like it's a shared responsibility and also an individual responsibility.
Here I wanted to tell you, I'm 64. So I've been through the whole cycle. And I had my earlier years, I've used cloth, only cloth. So the girls are immediately when I tell them about the various levels and I've been through it, it's like, the part being that I'm quite a smart woman, having used the cloth for so many years in my younger days. So it doesn't stop you being smart. It's because, but then slowly when the conversation happens, I've had one very, very sweet girl called Vanaja. And today she's doing her first time, a young girl from the tribal area is studying in Visakhapatnam and doing her science subjects here. So she tells me, what right do they have to give me free pads if they don't know how to take my garbage away? I mean, she was in the 7th, I think, when she asked me that question. I said, you're right, because the tribal areas, we do not have a disposable system. Nobody comes to collect any kind of garbage. It's unbelievable. So we have to dig holes and put them in that dump. So we're doing exactly what we don't want to do.
And so she hit the nail on the head with her comments. So easily she got it straight away.
Absolutely.
It's actually, there's a funny little gray area. So for plastic products, in theory, and according to the law, manufacturers have extended producer responsibility, which means for products like plastic, that they're responsible for also having recycling facilities and collection and everything. And there's a great man called Vijay in Chennai who's been doing advocacy work that conventional cloth pad manufacturers like Johnson's & Johnson's and Whisper should have a similar plastic extended user responsibility, because pads are made out of 90% plastic, but because it's not 100%. But anyway, it's true. There's the idea of responsibility, it lies somewhere. And so who's going to pick that up?
So her question was absolutely, they're giving it to me free. They're giving it to me free. They want me to use it. They're supposed to take it back.
Yes, yes. And whose interest is that in? Are they really about our interests? Or
I mean,
like
and it's sort of, these questions can get tears in your eyes, because if a 7th standard child understands it, what about the administration? I mean, is it so difficult? I mean, that's the point.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. And that brings us to 5:30, which is kind of perfect. So if anyone has a question, you can put your hand up. That's doable in Zoom, or you're welcome just to turn your video on and make sure you're off mute and ask away. Pranath is also watching the message box. Yeah, so any questions for our very experienced panelists?
I like that.
You answered all the questions. Very good.
There's such a pregnant pause.
Yeah. Well, maybe if you have one, write it in the
So
box.
in that case,
yes, Kavya.
yeah. So just I think this is something very important. I kind of missed saying that. I think we missed this part. So at the end of the day, no matter whatever a person chooses to use, no matter whatever menstruator chooses to use, I think there's also this whole importance of them having all the information and then making the choice. So informed choice is very important. No matter how much we might end up, or anybody might end up judging them or shaming them in this process of talking about this. So yes, I don't deny. So like the images that I shared and the few other images that I had, so all of these could be pointing to be something that's a bit strong, a bit heavy and intense in saying that, this is something that everyone needs to be focusing on, irrespective of whether you menstruate or not. You need to really ensure that, you don't use single-use disposables. So that is one part of the conversation, but no matter what happens, always I make sure that I ended up with, ultimately it's your choice. So I think this is something that I couldn't do in the initial stages. I was like, I'm so convinced you can't do it any other way. So kind of used to push it to people. So I kind of realized later that initially I used to push it on to some extent, but I think this is also one very important part that you just cannot, no matter whatever you believe, you just cannot. And even among the reusables, nothing is, you can never say that, okay, this is best, this is what everyone should go for. So that is also a choice option that people need to have. People need to understand nothing is fine, nothing is a problem. So I think that also needs to be part of this conversation, so that we are doing it the right way.
I love you brought that up. Yeah. It's super important. And I think I just add this piece too about product analysis, because I think this is what we've really found is one of the most powerful tools. And I think it is because it actually makes the choice in a certain way self-evident, without sort of, shaming or guilt tripping or whatever. I mean, I agree to some extent with what people have expressed, like, there is a way where I think it is necessary to say not all choices have equal consequence. And, and when we do something that's harming the earth and that we're all sharing, I think there's something really valid about saying, it's actually not really okay. But at the same time, obviously we don't want to make people sort of turn away from the message, which we can do if we feel defensive. So this is what I've really found is so powerful about doing a really thorough product analysis, is that that picture becomes visible and self-evident through just looking at all those products and all of those questions of ingredients and the economics and what happens when you're finished with it. So I found that it's been a really way of addressing that without going in hard with with a big stick or something. It's just really makes it very visible all by itself. The videos
for product analysis.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, Lauren's just reminding you. If you're not familiar with this process, we've done a couple of videos, training videos about how to do it, because I really just literally suggest this to everybody who's working in this field to really try this process out. And maybe again, Pranati, you could pop the links for those videos into the chat box, but one's a short of a video about just the basic principle of doing product analysis, and the second is a sort of real-time session so you can actually see it in action. But at the end of the day, I think when given the right information, people do make wise choices, and I do think that's the crux of our work as an educator, is not to just go in and impose products on them, even if it's for all the right reasons, but to really, actually lead to sort of empowered thinking and questioning. And I think that's the difference between, sort of like lecturing at someone and really giving them a chance to come to their own wise decisions. So.
Thanks for bringing up that. Informed choice is one of our favorite phrases, Kavya, as you well know. So
it's raised a hand.
Oh, we've got a hand raise. And then afterwards, I'll give it to you, Pranati, because I think you've been taking some questions too. So, but let's, Serena, over to you first. Feel free to unmute and video on if you like, if you're happy to.
Hi.
Hey, Serena, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. Okay. So it was interesting talking about waste and, listening about waste and.
Can you speak a bit louder, possibly? Oh.
Sorry, come again.
We can't, it's very quiet, the volume.
Okay. So is it okay now?
Yeah. That's better, yes.
All right, great. So it was really nice to listen to your experiences, the panelist experiences and all. So before getting into, before working with Eco Femme, I was working with Reap Benefit, where we actually dealt with the school waste systems, and especially with the dry waste and wet waste, and how to sort of manage it and how to give the empowerment to the students to take up the task of managing the waste. So there was this, so we sort of did this instructional scaffolding also, like, so I've got a figure drawn, and I'm sorry, this is not a question literally, but I just wanted to add 1 or 2 points, if it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so we did something of this sort. I don't know if you can see this. So like, if the waste is like 100%, how do we first take it to like say 60%, and then go to 40%, and then go to 20%, like reducing the amount of waste. So you can't have like from 100% to like 0%. That is not possible, obviously. So how do we do that? One of the ways like children would come up with solutions would be like, first see at their own houses, like what's happening, how is their waste going, from where to where, from, say for example, from my bedroom, then it goes to the main dustbin there. From there, the vehicle comes and takes the waste vehicle that comes and takes the waste. From there, it will go to the landfill and all. So sort of like trying to get them through the journey of the waste product actually. And so this brings me to the second point, is like where we talk about the lifespan of a waste product. So for example, you sort of animate the waste product. Like for example, the waste product is, so again, I used this, like if you can see, like, so I talk about like, so this is my old t-shirt. And what, after 2 or 3 years after I used my t-shirt, I give it to my younger sister. My younger sister then.
Can you bring it closer?
Okay, is this fine?
Yeah, this is good. Yeah.
All right. So my t-shirt that I've been wearing, now it's old. I give it to my younger sister, and then my younger sister again gives it to another, someone else who's deprived of clothes or maybe something like that. And then how it becomes a dusting cloth later on, and from there how it goes again to the landfill. So so the idea here was to just bring, and you could please put in your suggestions also. So the lifespan of a waste, the how does a waste, so in this case, like how does the menstrual waste also, starting from from us, how does it go to the landfill, like so sort of like scaffolding it, so in by instructionally and doing it a little more systematically. Right now I'm not able to put it out very clear, very well, I mean, very in a very good way right now, because yeah, I've done this, like, I think
I think it's helpful. Yes.
yeah. So but I just wanted to put a thought here, and just how we can use animation, I mean how you can sort of animate the product and show the students like that.
Yeah, this makes
Thank you.
perfect
And I think
sense. Yeah.
because it's so long, like the timescales and the amount and how you can break it down like this really makes it like digestible, a bit more accessible for people to follow the process. No? Yeah, that's very helpful.
Also, and this does not make them feel judgmental, or we do not sound fanatical also by giving this platform, I mean, by doing this.
Yeah, I remember when I first met Lauren, how she clearly just said, let's just talk logically. It either goes to landfill, so then we think about the life of a pad going to the landfill, just like you said, Serena, and then we say, what else? It burns, so it goes to the incinerator, and when it burns, you again inhale these chemicals, so that's again bad for us. Or does it go into the water bodies, so the fish eat it, the other organisms eat it, it again comes back to you. Then let's say, like, so it's just more like a discussion. Let's just think together, where do they go? Let's think about their life. And if it's if there are people who still flush it, so then we talk about the sanitary workers. So it makes perfect sense. It's just we are following the pad. Where do you go? Where are you going? So yeah.
Thanks, Prantni, you really explained it well.
Yeah. So can I read out a question from the chat? It's by Shilpa. Thank you for asking. She says, hi, everyone. I have around 100 women working in my factory, and all those pads are burned. How do I make 40-year-old a woman, realize the negative impact they are creating? They are all from rural area.
We put that out to the panelists. Kavya, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. With all respect to the women who are doing this, and to you, Shilpa, I think what I would definitely suggest is introduce them to alternatives when you and also talk about why you might use them, or if you are a user. I think the most important part is for you to be a user, you to share your stories. Maybe not like bring them for a class or something, but since you have I kind of felt that you have a daily interaction with them, use that interaction to share the kind of positives that you have with your clock pad or a menstrual cup, and how that is better, and have these conversations. And once in a while you can also have informative sessions, so it could be a mix of both of these, and slowly asking them, if one or two people want to try them out, maybe getting a free set for one or two people, and then asking them to share their experiences, and then asking the community of your factory workers to make their own analysis, make their own come with their own pros and cons, and then going ahead. I wouldn't say that you have to say that from tomorrow I have to come make you do this. So this could be one way of slowly taking them through this process. Or you could even try doing something else, like say that there's somebody from outside who wants to come and do this awareness or something, and then you can maybe give a one-off session where you talk about this. So yeah, when you do it, since you are in a daily conversation, I wouldn't say go into something that's very intense. do it gradually, or otherwise you can try even an intense session with somebody from outside. These are two things that come to my mind when I think about such a scenario, but I think others may also have some really amazing solution for this.
And before I want to ask, I think Harshini wants to say, but before that, I just want to say, I think it'll be very aspirational for them to hear that you use cloth pads or you use a reusable product, and just bringing that up in a conversation. I mean, like, we have these cloth pad keychains, and I don't know, and I really love how Kavya keeps talking about the aspirational part, because yeah, if you are hierarchically in a position of managing them, and if you are using it, for sure they would want to try it. Like, they're like, oh, so that's something special. Like, yeah, Harshini, please.
I think Kavya covered it all. I was just nodding my head because that's absolutely what I resonate with. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to add here.
Yeah.
There are a couple of, as we said, like she said that in the factory workers, but I have done in a few villages in the tribal areas. One thing which was there is I always love to say that Eco Femme sends these to the rest of the world. You know, these cloth pads go to rest of the world, and they want all other women in the world also to support this cause. And immediately they feel connected that this is a very aching problem, and there's nothing derogatory to switch or to use a cloth pad.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that's a really important point. In fact, I'm glad we're sort of coming back to it, because I was struck too when you said it, Kavya. I wrote it down, that this aspect of using our role as influencers responsibly. And it's something I've always felt a little bit conflicted about. Maybe it's also maybe being in a white skin, that, you know, I'm always very conscious of not wanting to sort of come in and tell Indians what they should or shouldn't do, you know what I mean? But in another way, though, I think that there is an opportunity and a responsibility that comes with our role as influencers. And, you know, if we're conscious of it and we use it with care, that role, then I think we can, you know, I think there's a way we can use that role responsibly. And that's been one of the takeaways for me in this call, actually.
I just to add over here, what I feel is that when we introduce it, I come from a very secluded, a very comfortable area of tribals. But the point is that there's somewhere along the way, within the next 5-10 minutes, that we women are all in it together, good, bad, responsible, matured, that we are 50% of the world population, and that we are contributing and we can make a difference. I think that really works. It doesn't need to be where we are or what it is. Suddenly we become a party where we can make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just sort of, last thing I say, but I think it's, you know, that the earth in a way is bigger than all of us too.
Yes,
like, you know,
exactly.
like this is
Yes.
where it lives. It's like,
Yes.
we're doing this and we're speaking of this message. It's not self-interest. It's not about selling more cloth pads. It's on behalf of something bigger, you know, our shared humanity and our shared, you know, stake in this earth. And that's, I think, like, to be really connected with that core value, I think that's what really carries weight. And
in fact, I read this letter out, which you write at the back, you know, which says, "Dear sister, these pads are our gift to you." And it's always, they love to hear, because they hear very less English. But when I do it, by the time I reach the next one, they've already translated. It's not like they don't know English, but when I read it out, it appears like the manufacturers of all of you are right there sitting with me in that hall. You know, like, you're there, you're participating, you're doing it. So that feeling is such a sense of togetherness, and that contribution is wonderful, really.
I think you're making us very happy, because that's the point. Like, as Kathy said, it's about so much more than just cloth pads. Like, it's about this sense of community and shared responsibility and the earth we live in. And yeah, I think that's really nice. Pranati, were there other questions? And Shilpa, did we answer yours? Feel free to pipe up and say if you wanted to give more details or ask anything else.
Can I just add this one more thing? I kind of remember this now. Maybe Shilpa could also speak to them and ask what kind of facilities they might need to shift to reusable pad, and if it's possible for her to give it to them, maybe that could also be a initiator into this.
Good practical point. Yes.
So if there are, okay, yeah, Harshini.
But I just want to bring in one point, like something that we tried out in Auroville. We worked it out with, because there's a lot of units where a lot of women work here and use common facilities. So one of the deals that we had with the unit itself was like you could sponsor half of the cost, and the women buy their like women contribute to the rest of the cost. And we found it very successful in women, and we did a whole workshop with them. We did at least like 45 minutes of product analysis, and then offered this pad as a choice. And it was very encouraging for them financially also to try out the pad. So Shilpa, if you could do that as one, like, or like your employee benefit thing or something, like you could find a small CSR funding for it, that would also be very encouraging for them to try the pads. Just putting it out there.
And just looking at the time, we're in our last few minutes. Anything else?
Yeah, so yes, Shilpa, you can write to us at Eco Femme. Anybody here, please write
I'll
to
run our
us.
email address actually, info at, maybe if you type that up, Pranati, just
Yeah.
any questions or feedback or even other topics you want to be tackled. Like we've got this whole network of.
Sorry, which place is Shilpa from? She belongs to which place? Where is the factory?
I'll let you know as soon as, okay, Palani.
Palani, that's far. Otherwise, I would have packed my bags.
Yeah, so there is a question from Shivani. She'd already asked about using one-time disposable pads, but that are made of banana fiber and these newer products, and what that means. Is that also an option? Kavya has directed her to some links where she and her team, I think, actually tried using these pads and composting them. It was super cool. So you can actually see if they are degrading or not, and what are these tall claims. But now there is a follow-up question from her. She says, I want to ask that earlier in India, people used clothes for periods, and then we came up to sanitary napkins, and then back to cloth pads. Please explain. Also, how long a cloth pad should be used and disposed afterwards. I think the second part anybody can take up, but then the first part, yeah, please, the speakers.
Harshini, do you want to speak to that? How long a cloth pad could be used, and then how you dispose of them afterwards?
I go with okay. When do you? How long do you use an underwear for? And we have these interesting answers until we have like absolutely don't have all the elastic gone, like that. So I think like the analogy of using your own, like this is not something new. Don't make it like a new product, like this is something that how do you use already a cloth? Like how often do you even to, for example, when women say like, how can you use cloth for menstruation? Like, I'm like, but you use underwear, like, so I would say like related to the same, and but also put an emphasis if it is a pad with leak-proof layer, to put it out that like this leak-proof layer, and each company gives a different like the number of years it takes, washes it takes for the PUL, the last leak-proof layer to degrade, right? So I would like to give that information and also put them into like, okay, this is common sense. This is like how long would you use an underwear until it's torn? And I would also give my own personal experience of like the pad that I have, which is already like 5 years old, you know, and it's still okay to use that. And also I tell it out that like for some women who are very acidic, whose body fluids are very acidic in nature, it might turn white. But still it's okay. Or if you don't want to use it beyond 3 years, also it's okay. But yeah, but I would leave it to the common sense.
And we generally say, is it like 3 to 5 years? It really, we say 3 to 5 years, and it's such a big gap because, as Harshni says, it's common sense. It depends how often you use your pad, so how regular your cycle is, or how many you actually have that you're washing and reusing during a cycle. And it's not like the pad goes bad or will be harmful actually to you. It's more just that after a certain amount of washes, normally around 3 to 5 years, then the leak-proof layer might become a little less leak-proofy. But again, it's common sense, and you'll kind of, that's safe at the end of the day, I think. So anything to add on the practical? Yeah. I'm noticing that it's time, and there was kind of a bit of a question we didn't get to, but you're welcome to contact us at info@ecofemme.org. And Kathy has a nice kind of little wrap up and something to share with us. And before we do that, I just want to say such a big thank you to everyone who attended, and for your questions and participation and just presence, and to our panelists for your passion and enthusiasm and anecdotes and wisdom. Big thanks.
Big thank you. Yeah. It feels really.
Go ahead, Jayashree.
No, it's like an embrace of something which I love. I love it. It's so inclusive.
I feel it from you. Thank you. I think we've thoroughly enjoyed the panel. You've all just given so much, you know, both on the really brought alive your learnings, and that you've been able to share with us all today have just been absolutely precious. And yeah, I think what I'm really just feeling is that we're all doing this, and the sisters, you know, our sisterhood. And so thank you for being here with us today, both as participants and especially the panelists. And I've just said, someone's just asked, is this the last webinar series, or are we going to have more such webinars? I think we'll have more such webinars. We'll probably take a little time to rethink where we go next. But
topics,
welcome to send topics. Exactly. We'll be happy to. I think we've really enjoyed it. It was the first time we've done something like this, and it's been a lot of fun. So I hope it's not the last. Is a little short video that I have disposability consciousness is what it's called, and it's a short video presented by a woman called Julia Butterfly. Some of you may know. She's an environmental activist in the US, and she really put her life on the line for trees, actually. And what she did in this really short video, I think, is convey in a way that really touched me a lot. And I go back to this video again and again for just kind of affirming my own sort of sense of why we're doing this. And it's this sense that too, you know, that everything is connected. So we like to think of this mythical place of a way, and that we can do something that won't have an impact. But of course, not just waste, but literally everything we do is having an impact somewhere, but especially when it comes to garbage, and we're living on this finite planet. And she's really unpacking in a way the roots of this idea that we can dispose of things, and that, you know, that there is some sort of mythical place that it can all go to. And of course we know that's not true. So I really urge you to take a look at her video, just because I think it's very beautiful and very inspiring and touching how she's brought these ideas together. Anything else from your side, Lauren? Okay, well, I think it's 1 minute past 6. We don't want to keep you over time. Again, thank you all so much for your generosity as the panelists. And it's been an
thank you.
Absolute
thank you. And just a moment, Kathy, I have Ajit here, Harshni. He just wanted to say hi to all of you. It's been great. Long time we couldn't come to
It's been a long time. Come visit us in Oroville.
Yeah. Everybody come visit.
Yeah, we'd love to meet you all sooner or later. Thank you.
Okay.
See you. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.